Welcome back. Now, if you guys follow my channel, you know I don't normally do this, but this balance adjustment got me heated, and also with Epic 7 content creators dropping like flies for whatever Genshin Impact. I figured I'd do it because I have gotten a lot of Discord messages asking for my take on this balance adjustment notice, and I really don't know if I agree with a lot of this stuff, so let's just go through each of them. Some of them I don't really have much of an opinion on, and others I have very strong opinions on. So let's look at the heroes that are getting balance adjustments. This, in and of itself, is pretty fair, I think. I don't really know much about Maya Pearl Horizon or the SC Pearl Horizon. I know some people used her for control comps, but honestly, these three heroes here, I never saw them in RTA to begin with, so sure, they can get buffs. I don't really know that much about them. Sage Baal and Sezan was clearly underpowered, although, honestly, the main thing that ruined him was FCC, and in RTA, you could just ban her out, so I don't think he was really that bad in RTA to begin with. He could be pretty toxic. LQ Charlotte, I think, definitely needed a buff. She wasn't so bad, but she had really tough gearing requirements. And the problem was it was kind of hard to slot her into drafts. Some people still highly valued her, so I still think she deserved a buff. Cerise. I have no idea why the hell Cerise is on this list, to be honest. Cerise was fine. We'll talk more about that when we get to it, but at least in my opinion, she was fine. And Landy, I think she definitely deserved a buff. I think SG kind of just gave in to the pressure because a lot of people were saying she's completely useless. I didn't think she was completely useless, but, you know, a little enhancement there wouldn't have been so bad to make her usable. The artifacts in general, we'll just get to it when we get to it because I'm heated about the artifacts. Alright, so Sage, Baal, and Sezan. And for the purposes of, I'm going to assume that you guys know what these people's kits are already, but if you don't, you could just read the before column. So basically what's changing is the S1, if the target is asleep, if he procs to sleep, he gets a 20% CR boost. I think that's fine. I don't think that's a big deal. Basically just means he turn cycles faster, so he could disable more people. This is just a very marginal increase in the chance to sleep. It's 80% before and 85% now. I mean, I guess that's good. That's a buff. That's fine, but is that much of a difference between 80 and 85? Maybe. I guess over 100 matches, but in terms of a single match, not that much of a difference, but still a welcome buff. Honestly, you might as well just make it. I don't really get the 85% number. Like 75% I get. If you're gonna make it 85, just make it 75 or make it 100. I always hated the 85% chance, but nonetheless, it's a buff. Now the S3. Baal's S3 was quite possibly the worst move in the game. It was completely useless. There was no reason to use it. I remember like when I first ran into Baal and that cool animation comes out and it hit me for like 600 damage. I was like, this is an absolute joke. Now it's pretty good. If you defeat an enemy with it, it silences all remaining enemies for one turn. But the biggest thing is the defense penetration. If you guys have been paying attention, defense penetration is huge in high-end RTA right now. Things like Blood Moon Haste, LR Crowl, all of these Death Pen skills are highly valued because it gives you kill potential that's otherwise mitigated by things like the end barriers and stuff. But I wonder what the multis are going to be changed to, because generally Death Pen moves don't hit that hard, but they have decent consistent damage. Like BMH, if you put on Portrait, 10k, I mean that's a lot of damage actually. LR Crowd, the first cast, you'll probably do like 4 to 6k, like solid damage, but nothing insane. So, I mean right now Sage Baal will crit you for like 2k with his S3. So I think they have to do something about the multipliers as well. But if this thing hits for like even like 4,000 penetrating defense, I think it's going to be a pretty solid buff. So yeah, I think Sage Baal was usable right now. Some people liked drafting him right now. With the buffs, he's clearly much better. And I think the damage of his S3 is going to determine how much better he is. But nonetheless, I think these two buffs are kind of more marginal. This one might be like game-changing, depending on if it hits as hard as like BMH or something. LQC. This is a weird one. Basically, they're just increasing the multiplier. So it doesn't say that here, actually, for Baal, so I wonder what that means. But for LQ, yeah, her S1 definitely needs to hit a little harder. This will also help with some of the gearing requirements on her, because the problem with LQC was she has that nice S3, but then she just kind of does nothing for 2 turns as she just spams her piddly little S1. If it hits harder, it'll make her more of a threat, definitely welcome. Now, her S3 is being changed, so if the target is a Dark Elemental hero, it increases damage dealt. I think it did that already. Yeah, they just changed the wording. And inflicts additional damage to all enemies except for the target proportional to the caster's attack. Now that's definitely better. I don't really know how good of a buff this is though, because LQC, like the way users, you really want to take out a high priority target. You really care about doing a little bit more damage to everyone else. And also, like, the wording of this, like, how hard is this going to hit? Like, is it going to be like a cleave? Or is this going to be like a Reingar's tick or a Uberius tooth tick, which isn't that much? It's better than nothing. It's better than nothing. But typically, if you're using LQC in a draft, it's really not to wear them down with AoE damage, right? So I guess it helps. But honestly, it's a buff. It's a buff. It's better than nothing. But I feel like the biggest problem with LQC was just her gearing. It's just so hard to gear because she needs to be kind of fast. She needs to hit hard for her S3 to be meaningful. She needs to be kind of tanky. Honestly, I would have been happier if they just did none of this. And on her passive, her S2 just gave her like passive 20% crit or something. So they could feed those stats into other stats and make it much easier to gear than use her. I don't know how much this AoE damage helps, but maybe it'll do like 50% of the S3 damage, then it'll be huge, but I have a feeling it's going to be very marginal damage. But we'll see. I mean, I have LQC at plus 15, so I'm more than happy to see her buffed. I'd love to start using her. But my main problem with her has been, if I get her strong enough to one-shot, she gets blown up instantly. If I make her tanky, she can't kill anything. And to me, that's a lot due to my gear, but I would have loved to see a change to her to make her easier to gear. I guess this kind of goes along those lines, but I'm kind of iffy on her buff, but I have no problem with it either. Now Cerise. Oh my... I have no idea why Cerise is being buffed. At the high end, I have been dominated by Cerises already. Like, who is saying that Cerise is bad? I don't know anyone saying that Cerise is bad who knows anything about PvP. This reminds me of the Flitica buff. Like, maybe the trash players thought Cerise and Flitica is bad, but top players were already using Flitica before they gave her skill nullifier. They were dominating with her, and then they were like, oh, we need to buff her. Like, why? Who at the high end is saying that she's bad? Who at the high end is saying Cerise is bad? Oh my god. So anyways, her buffs are bonkers. Like, her S1 turns her into Lilius. Basically, if her S3 is on cooldown, she's Lilius because her S1 not only will give her a CR push, but it triggers a dual attack from a random ally. So on control cleave comps, like, she's going to be doing a lot more damage now because she's triggering a dual attack every time. You don't even need to have her do any damage because if you have one single DPS on it, and if it's a control comp and you pair with something like a Baal or a Tenebria, those dual attacks are going to be sleeping you and stuff. This is going to be absolutely toxic. Her S2, it now applies unable to be buffed for 2 turns. I mean, why? Why? I mean, at least that's not the worst debuff. Like, I mean, it's still pretty toxic, but it's better than like blind or something, I guess. I find blind very annoying. But still, why? What was wrong with her S2? It's like a 100% chance stun that increases her combat readiness. Like, what was wrong with it to begin with? And now her S3 attacks using an advantageous element. So you don't even need like Oath Key on her anymore. Like, again, why? Like, what was wrong with this ability? I mean, people, like, the only thing you can't use against are green units before, right? Even green units, it would hit them every once in a while. I'm trying to think of what green units are really common in RTA. I don't even know, but is it even a big deal if it doesn't land on them? Like, and the damage dealt will be increased. I mean, this move barely does any damage, so I feel like that's not that important. But I'm just confused by this, guys, because I always ranked Cerise very high. Like, in control comps, like, I have had Cerise's completely lock me down single-handed, and I never felt like, oh, this hero's trash. Why would anyone use it? No, I was just like, damn, this guy has good gear, and he is putting it in my butthole. Like, this hero is an absolute monster, and now... I mean, she's one of the fastest heroes in the game. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. Maybe a high-end PvPer can say, like, oh, in Legend, no one uses her. I don't know if I believe that, but feel free to correct me if you're a top-tier player, but I just don't agree with this buff. But obviously, this is going to make her absolutely bonkers now. I think we're going to see a lot more Cerises. I think she's going to be a pretty toxic hero. In fact, I thought she was already a toxic hero. Now let's talk about Landy. They gave her a lot of buffs. Let's go over them. So, her S1. The combat readiness increased, the amount of fighting spirit gained or doubled when the enemy is buffed. That's fine. That kind of just like follows the rest of her kit. So she gets a 30% CR push instead of a 15%, and the damage dealt is increased. Honestly, I thought her S1 already did pretty good damage, so I want to see what that new multiplier is. I don't think anyone thought her S1 was weak, so we'll see. Her S2 is much better. The problem with this thing was before 5 turns to stack to max. I mean, she was dead before then. Now it's 20% per stack, and it only goes up to 3 times instead of 5 times. So basically what it means is she ramps up much faster. I think this is a good buff for her and made a lot of sense. I think having her get 5 turns wasn't too realistic a lot of the times, especially depending on what kind of comp you were running. But I think this is a reasonable buff. It definitely makes her a lot better. Now her S3, I think this might actually make her see play, because increased speed, for those of you who don't do much RTA, is a highly valued buff. Now, one thing you guys might run into a lot is decreased speed. Decreased speed really neuters you, right? Like, you get turn cut over and over. Like, that's why things like Cerise and Dizzy and stuff are so annoying, or ML Tywin. The decreased speed buff is debilitating. She gives you increased speed, so it's basically just a reverse, right? And it increases their combat rating. It already did that. And it penetrates the target's defense by 50% now if her fighting spirit is full. Before, it just increased the combat readiness of her allies if her fighting spirit was full. So basically, she kind of gets a death break on everyone. So I think she's going to hit really, really hard now. One thing to note is they got rid of the verbiage saying that it increases damage dealt, but I presume that 50% death pen is much better than whatever this extra multiplier was. So, yeah, I think we are going to see Landy start being experimented with, because she's going to do a lot of damage now and turn cycle even faster than before. But I think the biggest thing is this. It's going to make her own team turn cycle really fast as well, because this stuff is not conditional anymore. Only the death pen is. So I think Landy... Yeah, I mean, I think she's going to start making a showing, because if you watch my Landy review, I thought she hit pretty hard to begin with. Like, she wasn't going to one-shot knights. But now that she's stacking attack faster, some people might even want to put her on Reingars now. Yeah. And her soul burn grants her an extra turn. I don't know how valuable that will be, because she has nothing to follow up with other than an S1. But, maybe, you know what? This might be crazy against like a DN team. Because her S2, yeah. So if you're up against like a DN team where they have like more than 10 buffs on the team, if I'm reading this right, you could soul burn an S3 twice and wipe them all out. Because that extra turn, you could get 100 fighting spirit. Yeah, she might be nuts against specific teams. Like, if you have a team that has more than 10 buffs and she back-to-back S3s you, getting the stacking attack and stuff, that's going to be absolutely bestial. So we'll see. Now, Maya, I'll just be honest here. I don't use her. I don't really know anything about her. Let's just read this together. Okay, added decreased combat readiness on her S1. I'm assuming this is her S3 or S2, I don't really know. This is actually pretty good. 75% chance to provoke and 100% decrease attack plus a defense buff for the whole team. Wow, that actually looks pretty damn good. Huh. I don't know. I don't use her, so I don't know how much better that is, but clearly these are good abilities. Pro Horizon I also don't use. I don't even know why you would want to read the regular one, because who wouldn't specialty change her? Sleep, blah, blah, blah. Stuns them for 1 turn. I'm not really going to have any comments on this. I never really see her. But yeah, looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Alright, I'm back. I had to pause the recording because this giant truck was making a ruckus outside. So anyways, artifacts. This is where I'm going to get real heated here because Guiding Light. If you guys passed this artifact because you thought it wasn't good at the time, I feel bad for you because I think it's one of the most busted artifacts in the game now. And I'm actually furious about this artifact buff. So basically the change to it is that at the start of battle, grants stealth for 1 turn. Seems pretty innocuous, right? Doesn't seem like that big of a deal. It is a huge deal. A huge deal. Because you know what this basically means? It means that Flitica and Cerise no longer have a speed counter. Now, at the high end, when I ran into Legend players and they picked Flitica or Cerise into me, I picked Acid, and some people would pick Acoli, and typically they had to ban them, and if they didn't ban them, they would almost always lose. Although I think people start to know me, they banned my Acid because they knew that from Arena that it was around 300 speed. But basically, there was a counter to those 2 heroes on the speed front. And the thing is, when you're versing top players who outgear you, Acid was viable because even though they have better gear than me, Acid has like 16 more base speed than Flitica. So they had to have much, much better gear than me to compete with my Acid. Now with this artifact, basically if you're running Flitica and Cerise, you don't have to give a crap about Acoli or Acid anymore because they can't hit you. Their S3 is single target, and they could still snipe your C-Dom or something if you bring that, but still, they cannot stop the initiation, they cannot stop the control. So this artifact has basically neutered Acid and Acoli. So basically you're going to have to come up with some way to tank through it or be faster than them, and I think that's idiotic. So I really hate what they did to this artifact. If anything, I would have been fine with them having buffed it to be a 100% chance to grant stealth for 2 turns. Honestly, at the end of the caster's turn. But at the start of battle, that's going to be incredibly toxic because what you can also do now is just put things like that on defense, and you also can't bring an Acid against it. Like, that was my counter on Arena offense. If I saw anything like a Cerise or Flitica, I bring Acid, outspeed, push them back, easy peasy. Now I have to assume they're on this artifact. That strategy does not work. If I respect that they're a top player and I can't outspeed it with anything else, and you have to outspeed it with something from AoE, like what's really that fast that has an AoE opener that's going to disable? Nothing. Like against Cerise, the only option you have is to bring your own Cerise and hope you go first. And even if you do go first, you don't CR push with a Cerise, so what are you going to do? Like, if you could bring Broman, but Broman's much slower than Cerise, like, I don't get it. I don't agree with this. I hope they go, like, turn their back on this buff, because I think this is a big mistake. Bastion of Preluda. I think this is a good idea. I think that's fine. I mean, Bastion of Preluda was used sometimes, or Perlucia, but I think it helps you by helping you gear someone by not putting them on immunity. I have no problem with this. I have no problem with that. I like that. I like that buff because not many people are using this. Knights have too many good artifacts. You have to make the other artifacts a little better to incentivize them to use something other than Aureus, Adamant, Justice for All. Fine. Ducks Noctis. It's kind of like the Landy buff. Basically, it just ramps up faster. I think this is absolutely a good idea. I still don't think it's that good, to be honest. Like, I mean, yeah, 8 times. I mean, I guess that ramps up pretty fast, to be honest, because if you soul burn, I don't even remember what his name is, the SSB killer guy, Seaweed Head, whatever his name is, he could stack it up to, I'm assuming this is what, 8%? Is this a plus 30? I don't know, but he'll hit 4 people right off the back, so he'll get 4 stacks of it, right? So 50% of the bump right away, and then he can S3. So I agree with this. This artifact was considered trash. Like almost no one used it, so absolutely buff it. Andre's crossbow, fine. No one uses this anyway. Like, you could argue you could use it on, like, Cerise or something because she'll turn cycle fast, strip your souls. But those kind of control comps don't care about your souls anyway, so I'm not really sure who this is intended for, but fine, buff it. Silver Rain, this is much better, because this artifact was completely useless before, because what if it gives increased attack to your Soul Weaver? This is much, much better now. I still don't know if anyone will want to use it. Is this, what class is this for? I don't even know. But, like, I guess, like, a Ruzid could use it or something? I don't know. But I have no problem with this either, because this is pretty useless, and this sounds like, depending on what class can use this, may be pretty good, actually. So anyways, I think that's it. So that's my take on this balance patch. Basically, I'm fine with everything. I think this, I'm fine with because I have a plus 15 Charlotte. At the same time, I don't know how much of a difference it will make. This, I think, is overall good. This, I think, is a freaking nightmare, and I hope they take this back, because I don't know any top player that was saying that Cerise is bad and needs a buff. Not one. And if you guys, maybe you're a top player and you did think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought she was really good. I always thought she was really good, and I thought most top players thought the same. Landy, hopefully she's not overtuned now, but I'm curious. I want to experiment with her because I did mola her. I think she's definitely much better now. I don't know if she'll still be considered really good or anything, but these are really noticeable improvements. These I don't really have thoughts on because I don't use those heroes. This is absolutely busted and needs to go. If this actually goes through, I'm stripping my acid right away because it effectively means he's completely useless. So anyways, what are your thoughts on this balance patch? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Put in the comment section below. Call me an idiot. I don't care. These are just my opinions. And thanks for watching. Till next time, boys. Peace out.